The sirens had gone off too late. The skies over Kiral 7 cracked open with flames as the first human assault ships broke through the atmosphere. The aliens on the ground scrambled, not expecting war, not expecting a real invasion. They had sent the message to Earth as a joke, a fake diplomatic request offering a marriage treaty to the so-called Deathworlders, thinking the humans would never reply. But Earth replied fast. Among the elders, it had been funny. They laughed as they chose her, Lyra, the youngest of the priest caste, small, quiet, and believed too soft for war or leadership. She had been chosen not for her strength, but because she was expendable. Her beauty made her the perfect bride to send on the joke mission. Her innocence made it all more amusing to them. A joke bride for a joke treaty. But no one laughed when she boarded the transport without a word. Lyra didn't speak much during the voyage. The crew avoided her, whispering about how she would be tossed aside by the humans or used as a hostage. She sat alone, hands folded in her lap, her violet skin glowing softly under the dim ship lights. But her eyes never stopped scanning, learning, preparing. The humans received her differently than anyone expected. She wasn't mocked, she wasn't hurt. Instead, they gave her a place, a voice, and protection. They did not treat her like a joke. They treated her like a diplomat, like someone who mattered. And then she met him. Commander Holt was unlike anything Lyra had imagined. Tall, scarred with eyes that had seen too much war, he was everything her people feared. He had killed in dozens of battles. Yet he did not look at her with disgust or dominance. He looked at her like she was something new, something rare. He didn't trust her at first, but he listened, and when she spoke, he asked questions. In the months that followed, Lyra learned more than any scroll or training had taught her. She watched human soldiers train. She sat through strategy meetings. She listened to stories of Earth's pain, Earth's rage, and Earth's survival. What shocked her most was not how cruel humans could be, but how deeply they loved the ones they chose to protect. She began to understand something terrifying. The elders had made a mistake. They had sent her to mock the humans. But in doing so, they had handed them a reason to respond. Earth did not start wars for pride. Earth went to war for family, and now she was part of that. One night, when rain fell against the glass of the station's window dome, Lyra stood beside Holt in silence. He did not touch her. He simply stood near, his presence both solid and calming. She looked at him and finally asked the question that had been building for weeks. "Do you think I'm still their joke?" He turned to her, his face unreadable, then spoke softly. "No, I think you're their biggest mistake." From that moment, something shifted. Lyra trained in silence. She studied Earth's tactics, learned their language better than any translator, and took part in field missions not as a bride but as a strategist. Holt never asked more than she offered, but over time she began to offer everything. She stopped sending updates to her people. And when the war began, the real war, she was not behind human lines. She was on the front. Now as her fingers rested gently on her stomach, and she felt the life growing inside her, Lyra remembered their laughter. She remembered being chosen as a joke, but jokes didn't come back armed with Earth's secrets, and they certainly didn't carry Deathworld blood in their wombs. The battlefield was not what Lyra expected. It wasn't honor duels or graceful energy blasts like her people believed in. It was chaos, smoke, blood, shouting, and mud. And yet, humans moved through it like they were born in it. Because they were. She followed behind Holt, watching how he gave orders without shouting. Every motion of his hand meant something. His soldiers respected him like a war god, and strangely, they respected her too. Not because she was a bride, because she had stayed. She had stood by their side when her own people turned their backs on her. She had warned the humans of her planet's betrayal, how the elders planned to sacrifice the Alliance once the humans were surrounded. Lyra's warning saved hundreds of human lives. That was the first day she stopped being a symbol and became something real. The second day she killed. She didn't hesitate. A soldier from her own world raised a plasma blade at Holt's back. Lyra moved first. She drew the pulse pistol from Holt's belt and fired. The beam struck the alien warrior in the chest. He dropped without a sound. The others froze. Holt turned, surprised. Not angry, just surprised. Then he nodded once as if to say, "You've chosen your side." Lyra didn't cry. She just kept moving. They gave her armor after that. Not ceremonial, real armor. It was heavier than she expected, but she wore it with pride. She trained with human squads. She learned their tactics. She even began leading small operations. And Holt, he stopped calling her by rank or title. He started calling her Lyra. Alone at night, when they sat by the warming cores or watched over medical beds, they talked. He told her about his home, the green oceans, the wild storms, and the dangerous beasts that made humans what they were. She listened, fascinated. Deathworld was a word her people used to mock. Now she saw the truth. It wasn't just the world that was deadly. It was the will of those who came from it. One evening, after a brutal skirmish, Holt sat beside her, wounded. His arm was wrapped in a medic patch. Lyra reached out to help, but he caught her hand. "You're not just part of this war now," he said. "You're part of us." Those words echoed louder than any vow she had ever known. Weeks passed. Then, months. Lyra no longer needed a translator. She spoke the human tongue with ease. She stopped wearing the colors of her people. She braided her hair like the human fighters did, short on the sides, tied back in a battle braid. And in time, something happened. Her hands began to tremble. Her body changed. The medic confirmed it quickly. The child inside her was not full, alien, nor fully human. It was both. She didn't tell anyone at first, not even Holt. She waited. She watched. She studied herself, wondering what kind of future she had just created. Would her people reject her even more? Would humans accept this? When she finally told Holt, his silence scared her more than any battlefield. But then he touched her stomach, gently, knelt down, and whispered, This child is going to change everything." From that moment, Lyra knew. The war was no longer just between species. It was between what was and what could be, and she was carrying the future inside her. Lyra stood in the war tent, watching the map flicker with red. Each glowing dot represented a human casualty. The numbers were growing fast. Her people had sent new fleets, larger, stronger, and this time serious. They were no longer mocking the humans. They were afraid of them and afraid of her. The elders had issued a command across the stars. If found, Lyra was to be captured alive and returned for repurposing. That meant re-education, mind wipe, or worse. The humans intercepted that message. Holt had read it aloud in the War Council, his voice tight with anger. "They're not just after our soldiers now," he said. "They're after her." No one in the room argued. No one questioned why a single alien woman mattered so much. They had seen her fight. They had seen her bleed. They had followed her orders and survived. To them, she was no longer the outsider. She was one of them. Still, Lyra knew the truth. She was being hunted. And now, so was her unborn child. Holt didn't leave her side after that. He assigned 2 guards to her tent at night, but she knew he didn't sleep either. He would sit outside sharpening his blade, cleaning his pulse rifle, always watching the stars. One night, Lyra stepped out quietly and sat beside him. The air smelled of metal and dust, the wind sharp and cold. "You can't protect me from the galaxy," she said softly. He didn't look at her. "Maybe not. But I can protect you from them. Even if it costs everything?" He turned then, and she saw it, the fear in his eyes, not for himself. For her, for the child, for a future that had never been planned but now mattered more than anything. "I already gave everything," he said. "What's left is yours." The silence between them felt heavy, but warm. Then came the attack. Sirens screamed. Lights turned red. Ships pierced the sky in tight formation. It wasn't a raid. It was an execution. The Elders had sent assassins. They weren't targeting bases or fleets. They were targeting Lyra's location directly. The guards outside her tent were killed before they could raise weapons. Holt dragged her out the back just in time. His squad closed ranks around them as plasma fire lit up the night. She didn't hesitate. She didn't scream. She grabbed a rifle and fought. The child inside her kicked for the first time during that fight. Every step she took, every blast she dodged, every breath she drew was not just for herself anymore. She fought for two now. By morning, the attackers were gone, dead or scattered. But so were many of their people. The humans didn't blame her. They didn't curse her presence. Instead, they reinforced the perimeter, shifted their base deeper underground, and swore no harm would come to her again. But Lyra knew it would come again. They would never stop, because her existence meant something no empire wanted to admit. That two different species could love. That war could create life, not just death. That even in the darkest places, hope could grow. And now, that hope was growing inside her. The underground shelter felt like a tomb. The lights flickered dimly, casting long shadows on the stone walls. Lyra sat near the center of the command room, her hands resting protectively on her belly. Holt paced just a few feet away, speaking to his officers in low, sharp tones. Everyone was on edge. Since the attack, no one questioned her place in the command structure. She had saved too many lives. But now a new threat loomed, one that didn't come from space. It came from inside. Lyra's body was changing faster than expected. The human doctors said her pregnancy wasn't progressing like normal. The hybrid child inside her had accelerated growth. She could feel its strength. Her skin glowed warmer each day. Her senses were sharper. And sometimes, in the silence, she swore she could hear the child's heartbeat echoing like a drum through her bones. The medics called it evolution. The soldiers called it destiny. But the Elders had a different name for it. Abomination. That word had spread across enemy channels. Not just a rejection of her, but of the unborn child. They believed its birth would shift the balance of power. Not through war, but through legacy. A child of two worlds. One with alien blood and Deathworld fire. Lyra knew what that meant. They would send everything they had to stop it. Holt stood before her that evening, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "They've pulled back," he said. "No more direct strikes, it's too quiet. That means they're planning something bigger." Lyra nodded slowly. "They're waiting until I give birth. They want to take the child alive." Holt's jaw clenched. "They won't." But in his voice, she heard the weight of uncertainty. The next day, the council gathered. The human generals argued fiercely. Some wanted to move Lyra off-world to a safe colony. Others insisted she remain under protection where forces were strongest. Lyra listened, then stood without waiting for silence. "I am not cargo," she said firmly. "I am not a secret to hide." They turned to her, surprised. She rarely interrupted. "I will not run. If this child is the future, then it must be born where it began, in the middle of this fight. Let the galaxy see that we are not afraid of what we've created." Holt was the first to stand beside her. "She stays," he said, "and we build around her." That moment changed everything. Construction teams expanded the shelter. Scientists installed life support systems and reinforced walls. Soldiers trained harder. Drones patrolled the skies day and night. The humans weren't just protecting a mother. They were protecting their symbol of unity. Lyra could feel the pressure. Every glance, every whispered prayer in the hallway, every salute. They didn't see her as the girl chosen as a joke. They saw her as the future queen of a new age. But Lyra didn't want a crown. She only wanted peace for the child inside her. Late one night, she stood under the stars. Holt joined her without speaking. The two stared into the endless sky, filled with hostile fleets. "What if they kill me?" she asked softly. "Then I'll follow," he replied. She looked at him, tears shining in her alien eyes. "But not before I make sure they never laugh again." The day came without warning. A tremor shook the underground base. Dust rained from the ceiling. Lights flickered again, but this time it wasn't the storm outside or a drill. The enemy had arrived, not with fleets or bombs, but with something. Worse, assassins, elite units bred for infiltration, trained to bypass defenses and eliminate targets without a sound. Lyra was the target. Not Holt, not the base, just her. The first explosion blew open the far tunnel. The second collapsed the east wing. Screams echoed down the hall. Lyra was rushed into the reinforced birthing chamber, a room not meant for war, now repurposed for survival. 2 guards stood outside with orders to shoot anyone not coded in the system. Holt was already in armor. He barked orders, gun in hand, eyes hard with rage. But behind that rage, Lyra saw the fear again. This time, he wasn't afraid for a future. He was afraid she might not live long enough to reach it. "I won't leave your side," he said. She nodded, her body already tightening in pain. The child was coming. The timing was cruel. But life never waited for peace. Not on Earth. Not among the stars. Doctors worked fast, but the walls kept shaking. Gunfire was getting closer. Lyra gripped the edge of the bed, sweat rolling down her face. Her body trembled, but her heart stayed steady. She had trained for war, not birth. But this was both. Every contraction felt like a battle. Outside, Holt led a brutal defense. He fought like something ancient, primal. Every soldier who saw him that day swore he moved faster than human, stronger than before, as if the child being born had awakened something in him too. Inside, Lyra screamed. Not from fear, but from fury, from power, from the will to survive. The child was not quiet. Even in the womb it fought. One of the assassins broke through the final line. A shadowy figure, tall and armored in stealth plating, burst into the medical ward. The doctors dove aside. The light sparked out, but Lyra didn't scream. She rolled from the table, grabbed a fallen blade, and stood in front of her own body like a shield. Her legs were shaking. Blood dripped down her side. Her strength was almost gone. Still, she faced the killer alone. The assassin raised his weapon, but Holt was faster. A single shot burned through the enemy's chest. The figure crumpled without a word. Holt rushed to Lyra and caught her before she fell. The doctors returned to the table, shouting. Lights came back. Orders were given. Minutes later, the child was born. There was no cry at first. Just silence. Then, a deep breath, and the strongest, clearest cry ever heard in that room. The medic stepped back. The child's skin shimmered with a soft hue, part human tan, part violet glow. His eyes opened immediately. Bright silver irises stared at the world like he already understood it. "He's perfect," one of the nurses whispered, but Holt was looking at Lyra. And Lyra was crying, not from pain, but from something bigger than any war. "He's real," she said. "He's really ours." Holt leaned in and kissed her forehead, voice low and steady. No one's laughing now. Outside, the alarms silenced. The enemy had fallen back. And deep underground, under metal and stone, a new future had just taken its first breath. The child didn't cry often. He was calm, watchful. Even as a newborn, his presence quieted a room. The doctors called it instinct. Lyra called it something else, power. He wasn't like other infants. His skin adjusted quickly to the temperature of the room. His grip was already strong enough to curl Holt's finger. His heartbeat was steady, almost too steady. Half alien, half human, but already more than both. Holt named him Kale. It was an old Earth word that meant flame. Lyra thought it fit perfectly. Word spread fast through the human command. Soldiers who had never smiled in months came just to look through the glass at him. They didn't speak. They just stared, as if looking at a miracle. Some brought gifts, a patch, a carved wooden figure. a shard of metal from a destroyed enemy. Drone, shaped into a pendant. No one called her a bride anymore, they called her the mother of Kale. But while one part of the galaxy celebrated, the other screamed in fear. The enemy's response was immediate. Broadcasts went out across the stars, declaring the child a biological threat. Bounties were placed, not just on Lyra, not just on Holt, but on the baby, alive or dead, preferably dead. The humans intercepted every message. Holt stood in front of the gathered troops that night. No podium, no speech, just a message. They send assassins. We send them back in boxes. They threaten this child. They threaten every one of us. The soldiers cheered, not because they were ordered to, because they believed it. Lyra knew then. This war had changed. It was no longer about planets or borders. It was about Kale. She spent her days in the observation dome, holding him close, whispering old songs from her people's sacred texts. But the words felt different now, less like prayers, more like promises. Kale responded with curious eyes and strong kicks. He stared at the stars as if he recognized them, like he had been born knowing how far this war would reach. That evening, the council met again. Only this time, it wasn't just humans. Other alien species had started watching. Some quietly supported Earth. Others feared what Kale represented. Not all were enemies, but none were allies yet. A transmission came through from Lyra's homeworld. The face of one of the Fa. Elder priests appeared, his eyes cold, his voice controlled. "You have broken every law, Lyra," he said. "Return the child to us. We will raise him with purity. The humans have polluted his blood." She stood before the screen and spoke calmly. "He doesn't need purity. He needs truth," the elder sneered. "Then he will suffer." The screen went black. Holt turned to her. "They're going to send something bigger next time." "I know," she said. "And we won't be able to hide forever." He looked down at Kale, asleep in her arms. "Then maybe it's time we stop hiding." That night, the plan changed. The humans stopped building defenses. They started building something else, a ship. Not to run, not to escape, but to carry Kale and his parents to the stars, to show the galaxy the truth. Not everyone feared the child. Some would follow him, and when the stars called his name, Kale would answer. The ship was unlike anything built before. Human engineers called it the Cradle. It wasn't just a vessel, it was a symbol. Designed to protect Kale, it combined human tech with alien architecture Lyra helped adapt. Its walls were reinforced, with alloy made from both worlds. Its engines pulsed with glowing blue light, powered by systems even Earth's top scientists didn't fully understand. But it wasn't meant for war. It was meant for something greater. Diplomacy, exposure, peace, if possible, warning, if necessary. Kyle was growing faster than expected. Within weeks, he looked like a human infant of several months. His strength increased. His eyes followed voices, recognized faces, and even reacted to emotional tones. But what shocked everyone was the event in the garden dome. Kyle, barely able to stand, reached out toward a dying plant, just a test crop, in the hydro chamber, and the leaves turned green again. The humans who saw it fell silent. The cameras recorded everything. Word spread. The child wasn't just a symbol anymore. He was something more. Some called it evolution. Others called it prophecy, but everyone agreed on one thing. Kale couldn't stay hidden anymore. That night, Lyra stood at the window of the command tower, holding Kale as the stars blinked above. Holt walked in quietly, armor off, face tired but still strong. "We're ready," he said. Lyra nodded. "But is the galaxy?" He didn't answer. The next day, the Cradle launched from the surface under heavy guard. Fighter escorts from 3 human fleets flew in formation, not for battle, but for warning. Anyone who tried to stop them would face Earth's wrath. They weren't heading to a battlefield. They were heading to the Galactic Council, a gathering of species across known space. It was rare for humans to be allowed entry, but the news of Kyle had spread beyond borders. The council had no choice but to let them speak, or risk looking like cowards in the eyes of billions. The journey took 4 days. In those days, Lyra barely slept. She studied every word she might say, every way they might twist her truth. Holt spent his time training soldiers, checking systems, and helping Kyle sleep when the child's strange dreams left him crying in the night. When they arrived, the council's grand chamber opened its massive golden gates. Crowds watched through, galaxy-wide broadcast. Some cheered, some cursed, some simply waited. Lyra entered first, Kyle in her arms, his skin softly glowing. Holt followed, eyes scanning every face. The council leader, a long-necked ambassador from the Janari race, stood and raised his voice. "You bring with you an illegal creation, an unstable threat." Lyra stepped forward calm. "I bring you proof. That war is not the only future. That fear is not the only power." Gasps echoed. Some shouted, others leaned closer. "This child," she continued, "is not the end of anything. He is the beginning." The Janari elder laughed bitterly. "And when his power grows beyond control, when he bends worlds with his will," Holt stepped beside her, "then we teach him. We raise him with love, something your council has forgotten." The chamber grew silent. Kale stirred in Lyra's arms, silver eyes glowing. A low hum began to pulse through the chamber. Machines flickered, lights dimmed and then stabilized. Some council members stepped back in fear, but others stepped forward in awe. And in that moment, the tide began to shift. Kale stood at the center of the council chamber, held in Lyra's arms, glowing brighter, now than ever before. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He only watched. His silver eyes scanned the room filled with species from across the stars, and somehow they all felt seen. The council leader lowered his gaze. The room remained still. For the first time in centuries, the chamber was silent. Holt stepped forward and placed a small device on the ground. A hologram flared to life, showing recordings of Kale's birth, the assassination attempts, and Lyra's speech from the battlefield. Then images of human and alien soldiers working side by side, not fighting, building. Lyra spoke again. "You feared what this child might become. But ask yourselves, what did you become when you feared him before he could even speak?" A member of the Tathari, a once hostile race, stood from his seat. "What do you ask of this council?" Lyra breathed deeply. "Nothing for us. Only that you no longer treat life between species as pollution. That you recognize the union of two peoples, not as weakness but strength." Holt stepped beside her. "And that you never again call a child of peace an abomination." The silence broke slowly. One by one, council members stood. Not all supported them, but enough did. The Janari leader, once proud and cold, now looked down at the child, and though his voice was thin, his words carried weight. "Let the record show. This child is not a threat. He is a citizen of the galaxy." A wave of energy passed through the room. Like a breath the galaxy had been holding was finally released. Outside the chamber, on worlds across the stars, people watched the broadcast and wept. On Lyra's homeworld, the elders turned off their screens. Their time had passed. Inside the cradle, Kale slept peacefully. That night, after the council adjourned, Holt and Lyra stood by the ship's window, watching distant planets shine like stars. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Lyra whispered, "They wanted to send me away as a joke." Holt smiled softly. "They did." She looked down at her son. "And we came back with something stronger than fear." Holt nodded. "We came back with truth." In the months that followed, things changed, not overnight, not without struggle, but embassies opened where war bases once stood. Human ships were welcomed in alien ports. Mixed children like Kale began to appear, rare but no longer hidden. Some feared them, but others believed they would become the bridge to a better galaxy. Cale grew faster than anyone expected. By his second year, he was speaking in 3 languages. By his third, he was flying simulators with ease. But he remained kind, gentle, always asking questions, always curious. One day, while walking through the same halls where the council had once doubted him, Cale looked up at Lyra. "Why did they laugh at you?" She smiled. "Because they didn't understand who I was." He looked thoughtful, then nodded. "But they do now." And they did, because the joke bride had returned with more than scars and pain. She had returned with the child who would one day lead them all.